Hello, everyone. Welcome back to From the Dark Side. I'm your host, Sherry. I'm home from vacation. My mind is fresh, and I'm ready to talk some true crime. Really fast, though, every year on vacation, we do these escape rooms. They probably have these in other countries, but basically, you're locked in a room for an hour, and you and whoever you're with have to escape by using clues hidden around the room. Each room has its own theme, and they are really, really hard. We did one yesterday that was a murder cabin. We had to piece together clues from different murders in the cabin, and I contributed to us getting out. I'm usually horrible at these things, but you guys would have been proud of me. I'm sure each of you would have done well too. And I've said it before, us true crime fans are built differently. Anyway, let's get into today's story. 30-year-old Ben McDaniel loves to go cave diving. He's an experienced cave diver, but he's not fully certified yet. He fails to surface during an evening dive. The obvious answer would be that he drowned, but in stories like this, the obvious answer is rarely the right one. And here on the dark side, as you know, things are never that simple. This is episode 169, The Case of Ben McDaniel. We're heading back to 2010 for today's story. An earthquake registering at 8.8 hit Chile. It was the strongest recorded in history at the time. A 7 magnitude earthquake hit Haiti. There was the swine flu pandemic. Mark Zuckerberg was Time Magazine's Person of the Year. There was the BP oil spill. Tiger Woods delivered an apology over his infidelity. And in bizarre news from 2010, a New York detective said that he was unfairly fired after failing a drug test. He blamed it on his wife and said he had no idea that she had made meatballs with marijuana instead of oregano. Ben McDaniel was born April 15, 1980, in Memphis, Tennessee. He was the oldest of 4 brothers to parents Shelby and Patty McDaniel. In 2004, Ben graduated from the University of Memphis, majoring in construction management. He put this degree to good use by starting his own construction company. That's a pretty good feat when you're in your 20s. Ben's family had experienced a tragic event 2 years prior to this story. Ben's younger brother, who was only 22 and an experienced climber and outdoorsman, passed away. Having a stroke at 22 years old is unreal. Ben's parents and his other brothers were doing their best to move forward in their grief, but it was weighing heavy on all of them. Ben was the one who found Paul and attempted CPR, but it was too late. Some reports state that he died of a prescription medication overdose, but his obituary states that it was a stroke. Ben is 30 years old. He has no children. He was married for a bit, but was currently divorced. Ben had a love for scuba diving and cave diving. Before this story, I didn't know much about cave diving, and that's putting it lightly. According to a Tampa Bay Times article, Ben has been doing this since he was 15. His parents say he used to test out tanks in the family pool. Ben is really going through it right now. He's just come out of a divorce. His construction business isn't doing too well. It's headed towards bankruptcy. He owes $50,000 to the IRS. He just lost his younger brother, and life is really hard right now. So to help him cope with all these things at once, Ben's parents tell him he needs to get out of Memphis for a while. They offered to let him stay at their other home in Florida. They have a condo they own at Santa Rosa Beach. It's not occupied right now, so Ben could live there with his dog, who is a chocolate lab named Spooner. Ben would have a change of scenery and hopefully be in a better headspace. So Ben is on a sabbatical from life right now. His very generous parents are allowing him to live completely free for 1 year. He doesn't have to work or pay bills, just enjoy life. Ben is going to use this time to reignite one of his biggest passions. He loved cave diving. He hadn't done it a lot recently, but he quickly got right back into it. He's almost to the point where he's fully certified. He also wanted to be a scuba diving instructor, so this is something he's working towards. In Ponce de Leon, Florida, there is a place to do this called the Vortex Springs. Ben was a regular at Vortex Springs. All the employees knew him. He visited very frequently. He came out of the slump he had been in and seems to be doing well. He was going multiple times a day, every day, for 4 months. I want to explain this place, Vortex Springs, to you so you understand what he's dealing with. This is super important to the story. Vortex Springs is a freshwater body of water. I swear I pictured this place to be much bigger than it really is, but it's almost like an Olympic-sized pool. I don't know why I pictured it in my mind to be an ocean, but it's really just a big swimming pool. It's a large natural spring that pumps out millions of gallons of fresh water every day. The visibility is up to 100 feet. The water stays around 70 degrees Fahrenheit or 21 degrees Celsius year-round, which makes it popular with divers in all seasons. On the surface, it looks like a calm turquoise swimming hole with docks, ladders, and recreational swimming areas. This area is popular with families and tourists. It's basically an open swimming hole. But beneath that, the basin narrows into a cave entrance. This is where it gets scary, especially if you have claustrophobia. The first section of the cave is accessible to open water divers, but beyond a locked gate lies the more hazardous, deep, and twisting cave system. 13 people in total have died in this cave. So, huge swimming area. Underneath is for open water diving. Then 50 feet below that is a locked gate into the dark, complex vortex system. Cave diving requires specialized training because you simply can't just swim straight to the surface if something goes wrong. I'm sure that's everyone's first instinct, just start swimming upwards. But once you go beyond that locked gate, you are in a very dark world of tunnels. The cave is made of limestone, and you really have to wiggle yourself around to be able to get through it. You have to be very careful. If you're kicking your legs behind you to swim and your fin hits something, you're going to stir up a bunch of sediment and your visibility will be 0. Anyway, to get to this area, you have to present your certification to the Vortex Springs front desk, and they will give you a key to take with you to unlock the gate. Some parts of the cave system have openings of just 8 to 10 inches. Why anyone would want to do this, I have no idea. Just thinking about it makes me feel weird. I can't imagine a dark underwater maze that is constricted. The cave system is about a half a mile long beyond that locked gate, and the further you go, the tighter and more complex it gets. At the very end of this cave, even experienced diving instructors have to run guide rope. It's very disorienting, and there's a lot of really tight crevices that you have to slide through. In total, 13 people have died in this cave. Ben is 6'2" and 220 pounds. Plus, he has tanks strapped to his scuba suit. This sounds like a nightmare. Now that you all know the dangers of this underwater cave system, let's get back to the story. So, Ben moved into his parents' vacation house in April 2010. We're going to fast forward to August 2010. He's been in Florida for 4 months. He's been to Vortex Springs every day. We know this because we later learned from Ben's notebooks that in the last 4 months, he's logged 250 dives. That's multiple times a day, every single day. If he skipped a day, he made up for it. 1 week before Ben disappeared, he traveled back to Memphis to celebrate his mother's birthday with the rest of the family. He wrote his mom the following note. Mom, my gift to you this year is my undying love and support. As I have always told you, it's impossible for me to put into words how special you are to me. I thank the Lord each and every day for the awesome blessing of having such great parents. You are truly a blessing, and I am so lucky to have you on my team as a friend, confidant, and mom. You are more loved and appreciated than you'll know in this lifetime. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will miss you bunches while in Florida. Thank you again for letting me stay at the condo. It has meant a lot to me. It has enabled me to take the time to follow my heart and God's plan for me. I don't know where it's leading me, but you will be the first I will call when I have that aha moment. Talk to you soon. Happy birthday, old timer. Love you bunches, Ben. On August 18th, this is a Wednesday. It's in the 90s and the 70-degree water would definitely be a relief. Ben goes out for a dive at Vortex Springs. He finishes up but will be back later that evening. He returns that evening right before sunset and puts on his suit and his tanks and slips into the water. He's making his way down towards the cave. Now, remember, Ben is not fully certified. In order to get past that locked gate where all the spooky stuff is, you have to be certified. As Ben is swimming towards the cave, he passes two Vortex Spring employees, Eduardo Turan and Chuck Cronin. So Eduardo knew that Ben had been going into that cave during recent dives. He knows Ben isn't certified and he doesn't have a key. Ben had been jimmying the lock and sneaking in there. Eduardo is like, screw it, I'm going to go down here and unlock it for him. If not, he's just going to jimmy the lock anyway. Eduardo goes down and opens the gate for Ben. This may have been why Ben arrived so late. He was waiting for the employees to leave so he could fool with the lock and open the gate. There is this sign underwater on the gate. I'll read you what it says. First, it has a photo of the Grim Reaper on it. It reads, "Stop. Prevent your death. Go no farther. More than 300 divers have died in caves just like this one. Without cave training and cave equipment, divers can die here." It ends with, "There is nothing in this cave worth dying for. Do not go beyond this point." Eduardo and Chuck pack up and go home for the night. Ben has a pass that allows him to stay in the water past closing time. It's like an enhanced membership. Someone did a really good write-up on Reddit's Unresolved Mysteries. I'll link it in my sources. A good chunk of my research came from this really detailed 4-part write-up. The author said that it's important to note that Eduardo is a commercial diver hired by Vortex Springs to vacuum sand and silt from the cave. He's not there doing customer service or policing anyone. He's doing maintenance. Also, Ben had been coming here every day for 4 months. I can see why an employee might have bent the rules for him. I don't agree with it, but I see why they would have. When Eduardo arrives for work the next morning at 10 a.m., he sees Ben's truck is still sitting in the parking lot. Eduardo thinks Ben has come back today to do another dive. He even mentioned to someone, "Ben's here." Vortex Springs is crazy busy today with families wanting to enjoy the regular swim area up top. It wouldn't be out of the ordinary for Ben to arrive early and do 2 or 3 dives throughout the day. He did this every day for 4 months. I can see why Eduardo wouldn't have thought twice about seeing his truck sitting there. But the next morning, Eduardo arrives at work at the same time, 10 a.m. He sees Ben's truck is sitting in the same spot. He realizes he never saw Ben in person yesterday. He asks around to the other employees to see if any of them saw Ben yesterday, but none of them had. Now he knows something is wrong. Eduardo instructs the team to call the police. While waiting for them to arrive, he puts on his scuba suit. He brings a rope along in case he finds Ben's body. He can mark it so the recovery team can find him easily. Eduardo makes his way into the cave. He doesn't see Ben anywhere. He noted the gate was still open just as he had left it 2 days ago when he let Ben through it. Eduardo and others didn't find Ben, but they found 3 decompression tanks. They all had Ben's name written on them, and we'll talk more about these shortly. Police arrive and wait for Eduardo to surface. The police aren't going to head into the cave. They have to get professional divers to do the search instead. The police get in touch with Ben's family in Memphis, Tennessee. They tell them that Ben is missing, but he likely drowned in the Vortex Springs. His family immediately gets in their cars and make the 7-hour drive to Ponce de Leon, Florida. Police enlist certified divers to begin searching for Ben. I watched a video on YouTube, and I'll link it in my sources. Someone did a video of diving beyond the gate. I would say if you have claustrophobia, I wouldn't watch it. It didn't even show the worst of it, though. This was just right beyond the gate. So if you watch it and you aren't squeamish yet, I've also linked another video of someone going past the 4th restriction area. To think of Ben at 6'2" and 220 pounds possibly going in this area is nightmare fuel. This area has a part where the opening is only 8 inches tall and 2 feet wide. You'd basically have to be a contortionist and also wear your tanks on your sides instead of your back, which is something that Ben didn't have the training for. He would if he was certified, but he wasn't. According to Misadventure Mystery for Unresolved Mysteries, Holmes County lead investigator Harry Hamilton decided that his crew of police divers weren't going in this cave. They are experienced in scuba diving, but not cave diving at this insane level. Instead, they reach out to a man named Jeff Laughlin for his expertise. He got in touch with 8 different dive shops and was able to get 8 experienced divers on board to search. Jeff is taking the lead on this search, but now he's got 8 guys willing to help him who all have the training to descend into this cave. They separate into teams and each takes a different area and then they rotate. So there were 2 spare tanks found near the entrance that had Ben's name on them. As well, one of them was only half filled. So this is a normal thing for divers to leave spare tanks around so they could be like a guide for them to find their way back. If they need to use the tank, they wouldn't have to exit the water. They could just swim over and hook it up. So why would Ben leave them at the entrance together? By the time you get to them, you're not going to need them because you're almost done. Wouldn't you leave them 50 feet apart or something like that? I'm not a cave diver, so I could be completely wrong in this. These tanks should have been filled with a gas mixture, but instead they just contained normal compressed air. The 3rd tank, remember 3 of Ben's tanks were found. It was found 200 feet into the cave. A lot of folks wonder if it's possible that these tanks were staged, maybe by Ben, maybe by someone else. Ben's family is waiting at the top for any of the divers to say that they found Ben, but each returns with nothing to report. Someone recommended that police needed to get in touch with Ed Sorensen. Ed Sorensen is considered to be one of the best cave divers in the world. He has pulled many bodies out of places that no one has been able to access before. He's won awards for his heroism. He's like the GOAT of cave diving. Ed is currently out of the country, but his wife texts him and tells him about this guy in Vortex Springs that no one can find. He was last seen cave diving in this dangerous area. Ed decides to cut his trip short and fly home to see what he can do. Ed was warned that 2 of the rescue divers searching for Ben had almost died themselves, but Ed is one of the most experienced in the world. He is determined to bring Ben's body out of the cave and close this case. Ed suits up and goes in with Ben's family waiting at the surface. He goes in and he finds no scratches in the silt or marks where Ben could have possibly been in panic mode. He checks every crevice of this cave. He even goes well past the 4th restriction. He says to get past this area, he had to remove his tanks and turn himself sideways in order to fit through. Ed Sorensen said, quote, "I am 6 foot and 190 pounds with smaller tanks, and I know what I'm doing, and I barely made it through. The last place I searched was pristine, without a mark that a diver had been there. It would be impossible to go through that restriction without making a mark on the floor or the ceiling. He's not in there." Ben's helmet was 10 inches long. Ed went through parts that were 8 inches. Ben couldn't have made it that far without taking his helmet off, but Ed searched there anyway. If Ben took his helmet off to get through tight spots, he would have died shortly afterwards. None of Ben's gear was found in this cave by anyone, not even by Ed, who was the best in the world. According to that write-up in Unresolved Mysteries by Misadventure Mystery, Ben's parents aren't convinced. They believe Ben is still in that cave. They were upset when Ed had to tell them that he wasn't down there, nor was any of his gear. It was at this point other rescue divers began dropping out. They look up to Ed, and if he says he's not in that cave, then he's not in that cave. Meanwhile, there's some stuff going on up on the land. Ben's black pickup truck was found in the parking lot just as he left it. Inside was his wallet containing $681, his cell phone, and driver's license. Back at Ben's parents' condo where he was staying, police find Ben's dog Spooner. Spooner was very hungry and thirsty. Her owner hasn't been home for 2 days. It's a good thing someone got there because she may not have survived a couple more days. Books about cave diving were all over his bed. Ben also had hand-drawn maps of inside the Vortex Springs cave with notations and calculations. According to Misadventure Mystery, Ben's notebook that he used to log his dives was filled. This guy was going multiple times a day for 4 months. Well, in the beginning of the notebook, everything was very neat and orderly. But as the months progressed, his writing became erratic and messy. He was taking diving classes, but wasn't finishing them. He was cutting all these corners to become certified. We see Ben has become literally obsessed with cave diving. I mean this in the gentlest way possible. I think Ben thought he was a lot better diver than he really was. He could have been really, really good. He had the drive, as you can see, but he was in a rush. He's missing a lot of the important stuff he needed to learn along the way and just going straight to the advanced stage. He was reading the info, but not giving himself enough time to fully understand it. He would just move on to the next thing. Ben had multiple temporary certification cards, but many were written in his own handwriting. Cadaver dogs were brought in to survey the area around the Vortex Springs. There's a campground and play area. They don't hit on anything. However, one of the dogs jumped in the water and began swimming towards the cave. This helps Ben's parents in their argument that Ben is definitely in the cave. Samples of water were tested in the spring's outlets for decomposition-associated bacteria. No conclusive evidence is found indicating that a dead body is in this body of water. If Ben impossibly made it all the way past where Ed Sorensen went, he would eventually end up in Blue Creek, which turns into Sandy Creek. Both were searched with no sign of Ben. So Ben's parents are really frustrated because they still believe their son is down there, even after Ed Sorensen and others said that he wasn't. His parents get with the Holmes County Sheriff's Department and ask them about their remote-operated vehicle. They want the police to use their ROV to search the cave. If you remember back to episode 159 where we talked about the Ocean Gate disaster, you'll remember the ROV that found the debris field. They are these cool little devices that can go places that others can't and no one's life is at risk. The sheriff's department does have an ROV, but they tell Ben's parents that they don't want to deploy it into the cave because they're afraid it could be lost or damaged. Ben's family asks what the device costs and agreed to pay for it if anything happened to it. Well, it's a $54,000 device. Ben's parents say, no problem, we will pay this amount to you. If it gets lost or whatever, send it in. So they send in the ROV, and as expected, it didn't find anything either. Ben's parents, Shelby and Patty, reach out to Stephen Keene. He's the man who had originally mapped the cave back in 2003. He's one of the only people to have gone to the very end. He agrees to help look for Ben. Stephen comes out and says, nope, he's not in there. Neither is his gear, just as Ed Sorensen had said. This is when Ben's parents got desperate. They offered a $10,000 reward for any diver, quote, brave enough to go in and find Ben. Then they increased it to $30,000. Well, this really offended the diving community, especially Ed and Stephen. These folks had searched the cave end to end, top to bottom, and found no sign of Ben anywhere. Now there is a reward, and all these inexperienced divers are going to come from all over the place to try and find him. Unfortunately, one of them died, possibly trying to claim their reward. A Canadian woman named Jill Heinerth contacts Ben's parents. She is considered to be one of the best female cave divers in the world. She offered to go look for Ben, and she would film it and make it into a documentary called Ben's Vortex. Jill has made a few underwater documentaries. Her husband dives with her and films everything. She hopes that by doing this, Ben's parents would rescind their reward and stop having inexperienced divers going into this cave. As many others before her, Jill doesn't find Ben or his equipment either. Let's get into the theories about what may have happened to Ben, because Ben's body was never recovered, even today in 2025. All we have are theories, and these are the main four. Theory number one, he got lost in the cave and died there. This is the simplest and for many cave divers and the family the most plausible scenario. The cave is complex. Ben was comfortable diving but not certified for deep caves, and the place contains many tight restrictions where a panicked diver can get stuck or disoriented. The fact that some of his tanks were found inside the cave supports the idea that he at least went into the cave. Plus, we know Eduardo unlocked it for him. The difficulty is that despite extended searches, including by extremely experienced divers like Ed Sorensen, and with the help of the person who mapped the cave and the Sheriff's Department's ROV, no trace of Ben's body was ever found. Some will counter this, like Ben's parents, and say that the cave has unmapped or extremely tight sections that divers could not safely reach, meaning his remains could still be in an inaccessible area. He could be buried in sand, but those early searches, just days after he disappeared, didn't show anything. It could take a while for him to be completely buried in sand. Theory number two, he staged his disappearance and started a new life. Some suggested, especially early in the case when no remains surfaced, that Ben may have wanted to escape stress or problems and left on purpose. But, and this is a huge but, his wallet and phone were in the truck, his dog was left at the family beach house. Ben's dog Spooner was a rescue who he adored, and he wouldn't leave Spooner alone for days to die of starvation. Ben owed $50,000 in taxes that he didn't have the money to pay for. He had just gone through a divorce. His construction business was bankrupt. He lost his younger brother, and he was the one to perform CPR on him. That's a lot of stuff for one person to go through. I can see him wanting to reset his life. But his parents were giving him just that. They gave him 1 free year to do whatever he wanted. No bills, no worries about money. There was no reason for him to want to leave this. Ben seems to be someone who had started rebuilding his life rather than running from it. He was 4 months into his 12-month sabbatical. These things make voluntary disappearance appear less likely. Additionally, staging such a complete disappearance involving vanishing in a high-attention area would be difficult and risky. Still, people continue to argue for this possibility because Ben's body hasn't turned up. They think he's living off the grid somewhere or is alive and well and living under a new name. We know he was in the water because Eduardo opened the gate. If he came up without those decompression tanks, he could be really sick. Something that helps this theory that Ben made it out of the water alive is those water samples of the spring that showed no evidence of anything decomposing inside that cave. Theory number 3, foul play. He was removed from the cave or harmed on land. Some divers and investigators considered whether someone could have deliberately removed and hidden Ben's body. The idea came from the fact that Ben's body could have been taken out before the searches began, or that something happened on land after he exited the water. Those against this theory say there were no obvious signs of a struggle at the site and nothing was found on the land. I know there's been a lot of speculation about Eduardo, the Vortex Spring employee. He and Chuck both passed polygraphs. I know polygraphs aren't the best tool, but this was a big deal for everyone that Eduardo and Chuck had passed. I went down some real rabbit holes in the research for this case, and I managed to find a comment from Eduardo on a YouTube video of Ben on a previous dive at Vortex Springs. I'll read what Eduardo had to say at the end. Theory number 4, Ben committed suicide by squeezing into a tight space that search divers cannot get to, knowing he would not be able to get back out. Ben knows that his parents just lost one son. He likely wouldn't want to put them through that situation again. Also, finding a crevice to squeeze his 6-foot, 220-pound body into that Ed and others wouldn't be able to find would be damn near impossible. Plus, Ben was doing well at this time, except his obsession with cave diving seems to be out of the norm. Ben had resources and a support system. How many people have gone through hard times and had their parents say, "Here's the keys to a nice home in Florida, be free for a year, do whatever you want. You don't have to work or pay bills." I don't know anyone who have had that kind of support system. Theory number 5, this is a hybrid theory. A botched attempt to go deeper followed by an event that moved him away from the main search zones. This theory tries to match the tanks found near the entrance and inside the cave with the lack of remains. Perhaps he went deeper than expected, and then he panicked near a narrow squeeze and either became wedged or lost in a way that left his scattered pieces of gear or led to his body moving into an unmapped area. It's not an elegant theory, but it's consistent with what we know about how cave diving accidents can evolve. Jill's documentary evidence and interviews with experts point towards such a complicated, messy outcome as being realistic possibilities. I don't like it, but it is possible. I want to mention something that so many message boards have been talking about. None of this is officially reported that I can find. It's just an allegation, but a lot of armchair detectives mention this. The owner of the facility, Mr. Kelly, showed up after Eduardo left that night. Some allege that it's possible Ben passed away in the cave and maybe they didn't want to deal with the fallout and liability, so someone could have gotten rid of his body. Mr. Kelly passed away in 2012. Another thing that people bring up, I don't think it's important to the case, but some listener will mention that I forgot to add this. Ben allegedly had a criminal record in his past, including possession of drugs, assault, and theft. People move on from things like that, and Ben seemed like he was heading in the right direction. Many criticize his parents, though, and they say that his parents portray their son as this squeaky clean character, but he wasn't. In 2013, the state of Florida issued a death certificate to Ben McDaniel. His body has still never been recovered. I don't know which way I'm leaning. I respect Ed Sorensen's findings, or lack of findings rather, and all the other rescuers' work, but I don't see how Ben came out of that water. I found a video of Ben on YouTube during one of his cave dives. In the comments was one that stood out. Eduardo Turan, the last person to see Ben, commented on this video in 2023, which is 13 years after Ben's disappearance. So this is pretty recent. Now, the user's name is Miguel, but he said he was typing it for Eduardo since Eduardo doesn't have a YouTube account. He wanted to bring this up since he said he saw a lot of people criticizing him online. This user is a person with internet access and a keyboard, so it could be anyone in the world. I believe it's Eduardo, though. Eduardo apologized for his poor English and gave us some insight into that final night, and I'll summarize what info he gives us. Eduardo says that he met Ben 3 months before the accident. He started diving at Vortex Springs and decided to make a new map of the system. He was diving at least 2 times a day. Ben found the way to bypass the gate without the padlock key, replacing the lower hinge with a small chain and his own padlock, which is still there today. One day I found one of his notebooks and maps far behind the gate and very far and deep into the system. I told him about it and he asked me not to tell anyone until he finished the new map. He agreed to eventually take the classes and test to become a professional cave diver, and then he would be able to get the main key for the gate. Ben McDaniel's map took over 100 dives, and his map was 10 times more detailed and accurate than ours. Over the last 3 months, he asked me many times for a job at Vortex. I promised him that I would ask the owner, Mr. Kelly, but I did not have the chance to do it. The evening of the accident, he asked me about the job again. He said he wanted very badly to work with us in the water. Mr. Kelly was close by that day, and I introduced him to Ben and explained that it would be very useful to have another diver to help me, and I left them to get acquainted. 30 minutes later, Ben came back looking very happy, saying that he got the job and wanted to start right away because he knew that Chuck Croning and I were ready to dive to fix the lights in the cave. I told him that this wasn't a 3-man job, so he would be starting the next day. After we finished fixing the lights, we started swimming out and we crossed paths with Ben, who was on his way to the gate. I decided to open the gate for him because the way he was bypassing it was kind of dangerous, since the equipment can get hooked or tangled in the bars. That gate is not in the best conditions. Ben made the OK signal and passed the gate. That was the last time we saw him. Once on the dock, Chuck asked me why I opened the gate. After changing clothes, we went to my trailer to get some coffee and watch the video we took while working on the lights. The video shows Ben coming and passing the gate. When Chuck left, I was supposed to look if Ben was already out, but I forgot about it. I found the truck, towel, hat, everything on the very same spot I saw it the day before. It was then that I knew that something was wrong. I went in the water and I found his stage tanks in the same position they were 2 days before. The gate was opened exactly as I left it 2 days prior. It was then when I realized Ben never left the cave. I told the other employees to call the sheriff, and then I made a dive up to the 4th restriction without finding Ben. Eduardo then talks about Ed Sorensen and the other rescuers who searched for him. Then he says, I should have allowed him to come to work with us that night. If I would have, he would still be alive today. Ben's father told me that I should not feel bad about opening the gate because he knows there is no gate that would have stopped him from going to the other side. It was his nature. By the way, Chuck and I passed the polygraph test at the sheriff's department. Eduardo. It was nice to hear Eduardo speak on this since he was the last person to see Ben alive. It was also interesting to learn that Ben had just gotten a job there. This case has a very unsatisfying ending. We're left not knowing what happened to him. Either Ben's remains are somewhere that today's technology and human divers couldn't safely retrieve, or he was taken from the water in a way that we can't prove, or he intentionally left his life behind. I'll link a poll on Spotify since I'm interested to learn if you guys think Ben is in this cave or not. Since Ben has been declared legally dead, I'll say rest in peace to Ben McDaniel. That's it for this week, and I'll see you all again soon. Take care, and much love to you all.